Right, okay. Shailendra, welcome and congratulations on your new book launch, Making Money from Data. Tell us, what was your inspiration for writing the book? What led you to write this book?
Thank you, Will. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me. I've been in the industry for now more than 20 years, and I've seen a lot of myths around analytics, and people talk that many things about analytics, but they actually are missing a few things. So I thought I will put all my experience into a book of over 20 years and see what I think, what is my context which I've been taking to the market and talking to people about it, and it becomes a book to talk about.
So, in the world of analytics that you and I, we've known each other for a long time, and in the world of analytics that we know today, I agree with you. There's this whole myth around what analytics is and what's the difference between data and analytics and insights. In your book, you talk through 5 different distinct stories. Do you have one that sort of stands out for the readers that has probably left a mark in your mind? I mean, you put them in there, all of the 5 for a reason, but is there one that sort of stands out to you?
Well, of course, there are many more than 5 stories, so I could only pick 5 because the book was getting bigger and bigger in size, so I had to bring it to 5 stories. When I started writing, I was thinking of 10, but that would have been too many. There is one story which I like the most, or which is very interesting, though all of them are my favorites. But there was one instance where I was at a retail house and we were talking about pricing, and I was called out how old I was then. And it was very interesting. I was called into the room and said, "How old are you?" And I said, I think I was 36, 37 at the time. Mm-hmm. And the guy turned around and said, "Well, I've been doing this for more than 38 years. And you've just started doing, and you're telling me how to do my business." Finally enough, we turned it around because we went in and we showed him actually the pricing they were doing was not exactly to the market's needs, and we changed that pricing. And it was quite a funny story actually. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of those kind of funny stories. So in the book, the book is not a technical book in any way or form. It has got a technical concepts, but it has got a lot of business stories. It has got those ideas how these analytics projects actually get created and how you actually take them and how people get interested in them. So it's more human aspect to it. It's more business. Mm-hmm. I would call it a business book than a technical book, because the moment you think about analytics, you say, "Oh, it's technology." Mm-hmm. No, actually, it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made a really good point there. Analytics is bringing analytics to life is all about storytelling, right? And you chose to obviously do that through telling your stories through this book. How have you found, in your career with using storytelling as a way to communicate the output from analytics? Do you have any sort of insights around that you share in the book around storytelling as a part of or form of analytics?
Absolutely. So storytelling is an important aspect of analytics, we've mentioned it. Well, I've mentioned it twice or thrice in that whole concept. The myth here with the people is that analytics is more of an IT kind of a function where you write some code or something like that, but actually it isn't. You can build a very good model, a very strong algorithm, and it can go nowhere because it's not executed. And to execute it, it needs to have a story behind it. It needs to be told to the business guys so that they can take it to market. Otherwise, it's a very good theoretical model, which has got no legs. So that is an important concept. And so the whole process that I've designed, I've put in the book, also talks about how actually it is taken into the business integration aspect of it, how it is taken to the market, and that's very important.
Yeah, I think I recall as you were saying that back to when I was at a global ad agency running their analytics practice, and one of the first things I did was when I went to go hire a new data analyst, I gave him a really simple set of data to, I think it was a basketball game, the results, and I said, here is a basic table. I think there was 5 lines of data, or 5 rows of data, and I said, I want you to come back tomorrow and tell me a story. And out of the, I think, 30 people that I interviewed, 2 came back, right, that opted to come back. And it made me realize that, it's a real challenge, in the world of analytics, is having that skill set or ability to analyze data and then tell a story from it. Are you sort of seeing in the last few years, have you seen any changes in the industry around how that's developed, or is there new types of technologies, or what have you sort of seen as the next wave of analytics in that
So
space?
yeah, you're right, and I will add to that. When you're hiring people and when you're interviewing people, you'll find a lot of people who call themselves as analytics people, and because and I don't blame them, because they've been doing data manipulation for such a long time, and they'll be creating reports, and they would say, well, oh, I've been creating reports for such a long time, now I'm an analytics person, but actually they're not. Analytics is not writing reports. Analytics is about understanding what's going on behind the data, and then creating a story, as we said, creating a story and telling that story to the business so that they can buy that story and take that story to market. And that's a very important aspect of it. Now, what I've seen in the marketplace in the past few years is that a lot of people who were writing reports have now become analytics gurus. And actually they don't know anything, well, I wouldn't say that, but they don't do that much of analytics. What they do is they do a lot of data manipulation, SQL code they would write, but then they don't know what to do with it. And that's the difference. As you said, there are only 2 people who came back, and I bet they would have come back and said to you, 2 lesser data can't do much about it.
Yeah, very close.
So some of the guys would have, I'm just guessing, because that's another myth. People think that they need to have loads and volumes of data before they could actually start doing anything with analytics. But the reality is that analytics helps you create that data as well. And if you can create that data and use that model, or use that data into the model, it will help. And I think in a couple of stories, we've actually created data, and we've also created models to feed into another model, because we didn't have enough information to actually understand, to actually inform the model in the first place. So these are the kind of things that you would do when you run analytics projects and so forth.
Now, you titled the book "Making Money from Data." One thing that I find in the industry is, you ask any CEO, what is your most valuable part of your business, and 9 times out of 10 they say our customers, right? Our customers are our most valuable part, or our staff and then our customers. But customers are the ones that obviously drive revenue. Yet we're yet to see a line item on a balance sheet for the value of data. So how far off are we as an industry from seeing that, the line item in the balance sheet for customer data as a value for the business? How far away are we seeing that, and what is the path to get there?
Funny you say that. That reminds me, in the story, it's not in the book, but I'll still tell you that. I was working for this real large retailer, and we were building a data warehousing. It was a data warehousing program of work, and I was asked to use that data later going down the line and do analytics with it. So when I looked at the architecture, they walked me through the architecture, and I'm not an IT person, and they walked me through, this is what's going to come in, this is what's going to. So they told me everything, and I asked them a very simple question: where is the customer in it? And there was no customer in it. There was no customer record holding information there. And when I asked them, they said, oh yeah, that's the architecture and that's the customer. I said, none of this is going to pay you anything. That guy is, and that should be the center of it. It isn't. Unfortunately, we don't see most of the people. Most of the people think it is everything else but customer. And customer, it's. I would answer that question directly. It's far away. People think that they want to do that, but they're not doing it.
It just seems crazy, when you look at the assets of a business, and and customers driving revenue is obviously clearly an asset. Yet it's not. It's not communicated through the balance sheet.
No.
It just seems crazy that in the world that we live in today, we're still not there. And I think the reason we're not there is because we still have, the industry as a whole still have these silos of data and analytics teams that take data, analyze the data, and then may derive some insights from it. But then taking action on the data, gets managed by another team. And so as a result, you sort of lose that, well, what's the value of that whole process? We obviously, organizations are investing in people and process and technology, to output these insights and then take action on it. But it seems as though what gets lost there is the value model to go into that.
To add to that, and that's mentioned in the book as well, the reason for that is that because data analytics is thought to be doing some coding, some kind of coding is required in data analytics. So what people are thinking, or what industry is thought, is that put that function itself into the IT function. Now the problem is that it shouldn't be in the IT function, it has to be in the business function, in the line of business. If it is in the line of business area, then they would understand what business goals are and they will try and solve those problems. But what we see is that most of the data analytics functions are sitting in the IT function. And so they're thinking from an IT perspective, not from a line of business perspective, and that's one of the big reasons why this is happening in the industry at the moment. And so that shift needs to happen, and it is clearly mentioned in the book, and I had to call it out, that it's not an IT function. Analytics is not an IT function, it's a business function, and as it is called, business analytics. It has to be business, it can't be. So you need to be thinking about what business goals are and how they can be achieved, and for that you need to be part of the business.
Well, what's your advice? And maybe you communicate this in the book. But for an organization that is just starting out on their their analytics journey, all you need to do is a Google search to get swamped in vendors and tools before organizations actually have defined the why. Why would we use analytics to answer what questions and that type of thing? What advice do you give to organizations that are just starting out on this journey before they look at what tools are going to solve this problem, and to help them to define the why and the questions that they're looking to answer? What sort of recommendations would you give?
So most of the time when you starting doing analytics, the first thing you would think is, go to big vendors and get the infrastructure up there, and infrastructure is important. But what I would suggest is that we start small, though thinking big. And that's also mentioned, there is a step-by-step approach in the book as well, where it explains that if you were to do analytics, how do you start? So you could be collecting a whole lot of data first, then doing some kind of reporting on it, and then taking that to the next level to do some predictive kind of stuff, and then prescriptive as it's been talked about. But you could actually turn the whole thing around. You could actually start with business problems and start finding out what data is required to solve those business problems. That's the first step. If you start doing that, you will get results upfront. And then increase that data set, or increase that point of view of yours to an extended environment, so that you're getting results first, and then you're building a platform across it. And I think that's how you would get quick return on investment, instead of waiting for 5 years or 6 years before you get something.
You mentioned sort of return on investment. What have you, in the book, and I know you sort of talk through a number of different stories, but from an ROI of analytics, what have you sort of seen in your career and your history, is there a specific ROI model to apply to an analytics project or a data analytics project? Or have you seen certain trends of ways that organizations are proving the value of investing in an analytics team and people, and also software and process to support that?
So there are a couple of things. One is that when analytics projects are being set up, as I said, they're set up in the IT function, first of all. And then the expectation is that they're going to generate a whole lot of money for the organization. But that doesn't work, because they're not thinking what the goals are and how they're trying to deliver. And suddenly they become a cost center. Analytics is not a cost center, it's a profit center for you if executed correctly. And if they're trying to solve the problems correctly, the return on investment is huge. You could actually invest very little and get too much out of it. I've seen ROIs of 150%, of 500%, but if it is executed correctly. Executed correctly means define the business objectives are defined rarely. You go and say, I'm doing an analytics project. We don't know why we're doing that. We just get the team in there. Define the analytics problem that you're doing. If that's defined correctly up front and you've got a mechanism to measure it, absolutely, the return on investment is huge.
Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears for a minute in talking about the process of writing your first book. What was that like for you? When did from the time that you sort of had the idea that you wanted to write this book to today, where it's your first week in and the book is now on the market for anyone in the world to buy? How long was that process? And tell us about the journey around writing the book.
Funny. I wanted to do the book in 3 months. Never happened. So I think it was in November. I was sitting having a drink with one of my ex-colleagues, and we were thinking about what I was doing next, and he was asking these questions. He said, "You always wanted to write a book about whatever you've achieved in life so far and how that experience could be shared with others." I said, "Yeah, I always did." I said, "This is the right time." And I think we were a few drinks down, and I decided, fine, let's go for the book. And I said, fine, I'll write the book. And then I came home and I said, well, what did I commit to? and it was just a friendly conversation, and that's how the book started. And then I set myself a goal that the book will be finished by February, and we're sitting in June. So by February the book had to be finished.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the kind of effort that was required. And first of all, I thought, when I started writing the book, I thought, how would I do 100 pages? The book is 300 pages now. But when we started writing, there was so much of information that I had to put in there, and it all got in pretty quickly. But then there were reviews, 1 review, 2 reviews, 3 reviews. Then my wife, who had to review. The most important reviewer, and she said she struck it off when she had her review. She was not interested. And then it had to be made. There had to be changes that were to be made, and so forth. But it was a journey for 6 months. It took good, but I'm so glad it's over now. But for lots of people who are writing the book, I understand what pain they go through. Mm-hmm. Getting the raw content, then getting it cleaned up, then reviewed once, twice, typesetting, God knows how. Lots of things that need to be done.
You mentioned you gave your wife the litmus test of reading it and crossing out stuff that she didn't understand or was not engaging or whatever it may have been. That being said, who's the reader of this book? Is it a small business owner? Is it a C-level executive? Is it a marketer? Is it an IT guru? Analytics? Who's the audience for this?
Actually, the target market when I started writing the book was the C-level. But then I realized that will be one thing. But there are lots of people who think they're doing analytics and not doing analytics, need to have those processes in place. So that was incorporated. So now it's become a book for everyone. Having said that, why I wanted my wife to read the book was because I wanted someone who does not have any analytics background to be able to pick the book up and start reading and could relate to. You'd be surprised there is not one technical term in the whole book. I've tried to stay away from that. So that was a conscious decision that we will not talk about regression, decision tree, dimensions, but we don't go into details of that. But the reason for that is that if a CEO says, well, I would want to do analytics, he could pick up the book and say, yeah, this is what analytics is. And then on the other side of things, if there is a manager who's doing some analytics project management, he should be able to understand the steps involved in delivering an analytics project. And so he should be given that, so he should be able to learn from that book as well. So it's a kind of an end-to-end book. It's got both the sides to it. And one of the guys who reviewed it said, just beware that you're not making it a manual for analytics. It's not. And so the stories were quite, and so in the stories, whenever there is a situation where technicalities come in, it actually points to those areas where you can actually refer to. So you don't necessarily have to read the whole book, but you can decide to pick and choose what part of the book you want to read.
Awesome. Is there going to be another book, sequel that comes out after the first experience? What can we expect?
At the moment, I don't know. I'm too exhausted with the book, this one, but I think there is another aspect to it, which is cognitive, which I've touched in the book.
Which is called what, sorry?
Cognitive.
Cognitive,
So the cognitive aspect I've touched a bit, but I haven't gone deep into it. So that will be if anything comes out in few years, I think that will be the cognitive side of things that will come out with it. The other thing which I forgot to mention is that lots of people have this concept about machine learning, which is, I've actually stayed away from the book, from calling it out in the book. But when people talk machine learning, they usually talk about, modeling algorithms. But that's what is machine learning. So I've tried to stay away from that, and I think that will come in the sequel, where we actually define what machine learning is and take it to the next level. There's a lot of confusion there as well. So possibly that.
Awesome. Most important question, how do people get your book? How can they buy it?
It's available on Amazon. There is an Amazon paperback version. There's a Kindle version. Just go to amazon.com.au for Australia market. Go to amazon.com for the US market, and just download the book or order a paper version.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations again, and all the best, and good luck, and we look forward to the sequel.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.